Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Nolan, and I'm your moderator for this afternoon's Great Agri-Food Debate session. So welcome to Agri-Food Debate 2023, where students of food and agriculture from third-level colleges across Ireland and the UK are gathering virtually for this, our 8th Annual Great Agri-Food Debate. This is a joint initiative between Dawn Meats and McDonald's, who are proud to be supporting the next generation of business leaders. So I now wish to introduce the topic for our first debate before introducing our teams today. And the topic is, and bear with us, it's the long-term profitable future of livestock production in Ireland and the UK is a grass-based diet. And therefore, to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore scientific facts. And to debate this here today, we welcome our two teams, the Southeast Technical University and Aberystwyth University. You are both very, very welcome. And just for those of you who might be wondering, Southeast Technical University, or SETU as we will refer to it, you may remember was partly formed by previous participants, WIT Waterford. So, proposing the motion today will be SETU. Opposing the motion are the team from Aberystwyth. I should say that the stands taken by the teams are the positions they've been assigned by random draw and do not necessarily reflect their point of view. Can I also remind you that the Twitter handle, #GreatAgriFoodDebate, is now open for business. I would now like to invite the judges to introduce themselves to you and say a few words. And firstly, if I may start with Dan McSweeney.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dan McSweeney, and I'm the chairman of Borbia, which is the Irish Food Board, for those of you who mightn't be familiar with Borbia. And looking forward to a very interesting debate. It's a very interesting subject, I think, a very topical subject, certainly here in Ireland. And I would just like to wish you all the very best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. And next we go to Cathal O'Connor.
Thanks, Paul. Delighted to be back for the 2023 debate. My name is Cathal O'Connor, and coming to you from AIB Corporate Banking, where I look after the agriculture, food manufacturing, a couple of other sectors, and sustainability. Very best of luck to all the teams participating today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connor. And next, Harriet Wilson, please.
Hi everyone, so I'm responsible for agriculture and sustainable sourcing for McDonald's UK and Ireland. And McDonald's has originated from being a beef business. So as you can imagine, we're hugely reliant on Irish and British beef. So this debate today is a topic that's definitely front of our minds. So really looking forward to it. Thank you.
And last but not least, Isla Roebuck.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm very pleased to be judging today with this very topical debate. It's a very interesting topic, and as others have said, it certainly interests our business and all our customers. So I'm Isla Roebuck. I'm the Business Public Relations Director for Dunbia and have been in the business since 1993. I'd like to wish both teams good luck, and I hope you enjoy the experience being involved in the Great Agricultural Food Debate.
And thank you very much, Isla. And again, may I express our appreciation to the judges for the time and effort they put into this, not just this year, but on an annual basis. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome Ellie Dugdale, my colleague, who has kindly agreed to assist with the timekeeping. Welcome to SETU and Aberystwyth, who have taken the stage for our second debate in this year's series. To both teams, you've worked hard, deliver well, and enjoy the experience. Firstly, I'm just going to run through the rules before we get started, or a synopsis of them really. You've had the detailed rules. So some of the key points to note again are, the team captains will open and close the debate and introduce their teammates. Each student's speech will be a maximum of 5 minutes. And my timekeeper today is Ellie Dugdale. So after 4 minutes, Ellie will shout time, and after 5 minutes, time up. and the timekeeper's decision is final on this. Interrupting a student while they're speaking is not allowed, but after each speaker, 1 point of information may be offered by the competing team. And can we just remind you again, that is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a point of information. It's not a speech and it's not a scattergun of points to be made. It is 1 point. And points of information are not allowed following the captain's closing arguments. Without further ado, we'll let the debate begin. And to start proposing the motion, I invite SETU Captain Patrick Shanahan. Over to you, Patrick.
Thanks, Paul. Chairperson, judges, the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Patrick Shanahan, a humble beef farmer from County Limerick, and it is with great pride that I captain the highly competent and passionate SETU debating team for the Great Agri-Food Debate of 2023. Our team wholeheartedly proposes the motion that the long-term profitable future of livestock production in Ireland and the UK is a grass-based diet, and therefore to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore the scientific facts. Why, you might ask? Because this is not the solution to climate change, but a precursor to national economic collapse and global starvation. When one looks at the key words in the motion, livestock entails cattle, sheep, and pigs, although the motion suggests that we look at ruminants who can digest a grass-based diet, unlike monogastrics such as pigs. A grass-based diet refers to livestock that can eat mostly a natural grass-based diet, unlike animals who are eating an unnatural grain-based diet. Reduction means to scale back or to cull, and to ignore something means to avoid or to overlook it. Climate change, as stated in the Oxford Dictionary, is a change in global or regional climate patterns in the 20th century and largely attributed to the burning of fossil fuels. A scientific fact, by its very definition, is an observation or statistic that has been confirmed so many times that it can be taken as true. Therefore, to redefine the motion, we propose that the ability of UK and Irish farming to maintain consistent financial gain for years to come is the resilient grass-based diet, and therefore any scaling back in the numbers of cattle or sheep to negate the effects of climate change is to ignore accepted and true scientific research. And the scientific research that my team will discuss here today is stark and undeniable, as it poignantly demonstrates that the science is clearly being ignored. The key arguments that will be examined by our team are the mitigation efforts that farmers can engage in that will have a greater and more meaningful impact on greenhouse gas emissions than a silver bullet approach of culling the humble cow. Aoife will discuss greenhouse gas emissions and scientifically proven mitigation factors that the agricultural sector can employ, including the use of regenerative agriculture and multi-species swards. Owen will outline the economic and social impact that would occur in Ireland and the UK if livestock numbers were to be reduced and if animals were wrongly taken away from their natural grass-based diet. Remember, livestock are the backbone of the rural economy in Ireland and the UK. Cormac will demonstrate that efficient slurry spreading techniques, improved genetic selection, and better animal husbandry are all scientifically proven methods to make the grass-based system more efficient and to ensure less emissions from livestock. From a scientific perspective, these will have a greater impact on stopping climate change. Therefore, livestock are not the problem. Do not forget that a reduction in Ireland or the UK, for example, would lead to an increase in another country. Offshoring agri-food production overseas to countries that will not be as carbon efficient as we are.
Time.
The FAO have stated that livestock is the key to food security and the nutritional needs of the global population. Hundreds of millions of vulnerable people rely on livestock in a changing climate because of the animal's ability to adapt to marginal conditions and to overcome climate shocks. Ladies and gentlemen, the grass-based diet is the only sustainable and viable way forward in Ireland and the UK. And any reduction in livestock numbers is not the solution to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Patrick. I would now like to welcome Aberystwyth Captain Sally Griffiths to oppose our motion. The long-term profitable future of livestock production in Ireland and the UK is a grass-based diet, and therefore to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore the scientific facts. Sally.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd firstly like to introduce you to the 2023 Agri-Food Farming team from Aberystwyth University. Today we will be opposing the idea that for long-term profitable returns and more sustainable investment, the future of the livestock production in Ireland and the UK is a grass-based diet. And furthermore, to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore scientific facts. My name is Sally Griffiths, and I shall be your team captain for today's proceedings, and we'll be covering the climate aspects of a grass-based diet. With me today is our second speaker, India Phillips, who is going to be looking at the financial aspects of the topic and how the UK is self-sufficient in some areas and not in others. Our third speaker today is Hattie Bryant, who will be covering the sustainability issues of monoculture grass. And our final speaker today is the fierce Molly Hooper, who aims to frustrate the other team by leaving no stone unturned after their strong proposition that we've just heard. The captain of the proposition has mentioned how resilient a grass-based diet is, but this baffles me that they could be so naive not to see the downfalls in only a grass-based diet for livestock. If your farms were anything like mine were last year, by the middle of summer, grass growth became a dream. And with the current average temperature rising, reducing the growing season, this is set to just get worse. Last year saw new records in the UK of 43 degrees Celsius, with temperatures over 18 degrees Celsius going to limit grass growth as it goes outside the optimum soil temperature, which is already seeing an impact on livestock, such as ewes, as in many areas the poor summer led to a reduction in scanning percentages this year. Something that is worrying in a time when food production needs to be increased, predicted to have to increase by 60% by 2050 to meet the demand of increase in population. Surely mixed farming would be a more secure way of achieving this. Further factor of changing climate is warmer and wetter winters. This does, I admit, potentially have some benefits, such as potentially extending the growing season. However, the disadvantages are strong, causing waterlogged fields which are difficult to access and livestock damage easily by trampling, leaving areas poached with less grass to graze, meaning grass-based diets would not be easy. This bare soil allows for nutrients to be leached and also creates poorer soil structure as more wet weather erodes the soil surface. Harder for grass to grow back in the spring or requires reseeding in some areas, meaning increased costs, as India will cover later, and potential reduction in yield available for grazing by livestock. Monocultural grassland isn't environmentally sustainable, proven for reducing biodiversity in many areas. Alternatively, grass mixed with other species such as legumes can provide many benefits such as nitrogen fixation, which is of the utmost importance for attaining higher yields, and especially important in current times when artificial fertiliser inputs are at around £700 per tonne. Mixed pastures are arguably more beneficial to livestock, giving a wider range of minerals and vitamins to aid healthy growth rates. Also, finishing rate of livestock off a grass-only diet is slower, meaning more time with ruminants, releasing methane into the atmosphere. Surely it would be more efficient to have mixed farming that can utilise goods, for example, waste goods from milling, into living, breathing anaerobic digester, which is cows. Additionally, UK is not a single species environment. It is renowned for other arable crops such as wheat, barley, and fodder beet, which are all suitable feeds for livestock and provide more stability to farmers by having access to more feed than one input. In conclusion, in a time where food prices are high, shouldn't we be maximising what we can get out of the ground to increase food production? A single species lay is not efficient for production.
Time.
The second half of the topic highlights that to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore scientific facts. However, as already mentioned, much of the livestock emissions is caused by nutrition, such as these grass-based diets. These are more fibrous, meaning spend longer time about in the rumen, meaning more methane is released. When it comes to climate change, people shouldn't assume that their grass-fed steak is not a climate change-free lunch.
And I think we have a point of information.
Sally, you mentioned grass growth being a dream. With the use of mixed species sward, better soil fertility will follow, with both better water infiltration in the back end and also better water retention during the summer.
Yes, but in some areas, temperatures are so high that grass growth, no matter what the species, it wouldn't grow. There's mixed layers around us. They just don't establish as well if it's going to be hotter, especially even reseeded in the winter, wet winters. You're not going to be able to access them until mid-spring. It's just not as easy to rear livestock off those when you can't have access to it all year round, and it's not enough. You end up having to buy in fodder, which if everyone starts doing that, there's going to be a shortage, meaning you're going to have to reduce livestock numbers.
Thank you very much for your response there, Sally. I would now like to call on Aberystwyth University to continue their opposition to the motion. India Phillips, over to you.
As Sally mentioned, extreme weather events in the UK can prevent certain grass growth. However, the temperate climate of the UK does allow for adequate growth across the board. This being said, it cannot be understated that a very large proportion of the UK is considered a less favoured area. This would involve farming in not ideal conditions and puts you at a disadvantage to those farming in certain areas of England. Research from the Senedd states that most less favoured areas are covered by Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And furthermore, farmers in these LFAs did attempt, should farmers in these areas attempt to rear animals on a grass-based diet, the grass inputs required to increase the quality of the pasture to that which would support stock throughout the growing season would be vast. And based on the current price of fertiliser, as shown by the AHDB data, which has increased dramatically from February 2021, when it was £279 per tonne, to January 2023, where it was £700 per tonne. To assume farmers in these regions could rear animals on a grass-based diet without the addition of further grains is foolish. Mixed farming in the UK utilises regional abilities to produce different resources, thus minimising exposure to market price change. The UK is self-sufficient in its production of lamb at 109%, meaning there is leeway to reduce production in this area. But other sectors, such as dairy and beef, are not self-sufficient, and to help ease the cost of living, we need to maximise production in these areas. Ensuring long-term profitability is to ensure financial stability, and allowing farms to produce and utilise products which require the least input costs by region could help maximise profits. Studies have shown that the most efficient method of finishing beef bulls with moderate emissions is a 19th-month system involving pasture. However, finishing animals in this timeframe is unlikely without the addition of grains. There has been further research into the addition of certain products into a grain and grass-based diet, which can help minimise emissions from livestock. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, India. Have we any points of information from SETU?
You mentioned there about finishing animals in 19 months, and yes, that's true. But there's actually been studies further done by Chagas and other researchers that red clover silage can make up that downfall for grains, as they can get up to 1.2 kilos of weight gain per day.
Red clover wouldn't actually be included in the topic of grass, as it's a legume, and a lot of the farms, as I mentioned, being less favoured areas, would actually struggle to support legumes and, the involvement of such legumes in grass swards in the production of silage.
Thank you very much for your response there, India. I would now like to invite from SETU proposing the motion, Aoife Marr. Aoife.
Good afternoon. My name is Aoife and I second the motion here today. Agriculture production is a key driver of the Irish economy. Agriculture in Ireland is dominated by livestock reared on a grass-based diet, and according to the CSO, 88% of gross agricultural output comes from livestock products, while meat and livestock exports account for 1/3 of all food and drink exports, supporting demand for other countries. You are seriously suggesting that one of Ireland's most important indigenous sectors that supports over 100,000 farms across the country to not only decrease their livestock, but also their livelihoods and income. there's going to be a lot of debate here today about grass-based diets, livestock numbers, and methane. Let's be clear and look at the scientific facts about methane. Methane is a short-lived greenhouse gas. It degrades in the atmosphere over decades. Once in the equilibrium, it can continue to be emitted at a stable rate without increasing its concentration in the atmosphere. All methane molecules behave the same in the atmosphere, but they can come in two different types, biological and fossil. Biogenic methane is produced from biological plant and animal sources. This is carbon recently derived from the carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere. Over time, it decays back into CO2 without adding concentration to the CO2 in the long term. Biogenic methane is emitted by livestock and waste treatment, for example. Fossil methane emissions, on the other hand, return geological carbon to the atmosphere that has typically been stored underground for millions of years. Releasing this methane adds to the atmospheric concentration of CO2 as well as causing additional warming as methane. The Zero Carbon Amendment Bill aims to reduce our emissions of fossil methane together with other greenhouse gases, with the exception of biogenic methane, to net zero. Examples of fossil methane sources include coal mining, natural gas leakage, and methanol production from natural gas. Mike Walsh, who is a lecturer here in SETU, spoke about the carbon cycle of a cow in a talk at BioFarm 2022. In this talk, Mike states that carbon is stored as carbohydrates in grassland species which are consumed by cows. The cow then produces dung and belches, which releases carbon as methane. Methane is converted into carbon dioxide after 12 years through hydroxyl oxidation. This carbon dioxide is used by grassland species as part of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is used by plants to reproduce for cows to eat them again. Ladies and gentlemen, the cow is a part of our ecosystem and therefore should not be removed. In addition, grassland is a habitat which contains multiple species, including legumes. Reducing emissions is a target, but a reduction in livestock numbers is not a solution. One key scientifically proven solution is regenerative agriculture. This is farming and grazing practices that, among other benefits, reverse climate change by rebuilding soil organic matter and restoring degraded soil biodiversity, resulting in both carbon drawdown and improving the water cycle. These practices include promoting biodiversity through crop rotation, reduce the use of artificial fertilizers, and utilizes more sustainable grazing management, allowing land sufficient time to regenerate between grazing periods. This results in an increase in soil carbon deposits, water retention, plant and insect biodiversity, and improved pasture conditions. In addition, the use of multi-species swards can help reduce fertilizer use and reduce nitrate leaching. Regenerative agriculture sequesters carbon from the atmosphere and has the potential to reverse climate change instead of contributing to it. An agricultural system that puts more back into the environment and society than it takes out. By naturally reintroducing carbon and nutrient resources back into the land, this approach can protect farmers, livestock, support ecosystem health, mitigate climate change, and support farmers and their livelihoods. This can help solve the climate and biodiversity crisis while supporting sustainable livelihoods without the need to introduce such harsh regimes and mercilessly cull farmers' livestock. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aoife. And now, opposing the motion, the long-term profitable future of livestock production in Ireland and the UK is a grass-based diet, and therefore to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore the scientific facts. Hattie Bright, over to you.
Do you believe every farmer has enough land to rotate their livestock effectively so that the grasses can regenerate quickly and efficiently? If they do, think how much extra labour that farm will require to ensure this. This could include moving the cows, reseeding poor patches of grass, irrigation, refencing, and the upkeep of the general land. On the other hand, what if the farmer doesn't have the space? What are they supposed to do? Buy more land? Reduce their livestock numbers? Rent land? How would that be beneficial to that livestock farmer other than having possibly happier cows and maybe a higher quality produce? Climate change has had a huge effect on agronomy of the UK. As the UK tries to become more carbon emission friendly, the country has attempted to become more sustainable and dependent on itself. Some farmers that didn't before have now started to grow their own crops for their own livestock and to sell on to enterprises to help benefit the Self-Sustainable Act. The land used up for these crops that may have once been grassland can generate a higher economy than grasses, a higher economy that could be used to help create a better way of producing meat with less carbon input and output. Therefore, why should the number of livestock change? Although reducing the numbers would decrease carbon emissions, keeping the number of livestock the same wouldn't change the current carbon and methane emission. Therefore, if we do not reduce livestock numbers, but could change the way we release the carbon into the atmosphere, there would be no reason to decline the livestock production that is in such high demand due to the new Self-Sustainable Country Act. Carbon capture and methane capture is a project that has been highly researched but not funded well enough for it to become a mainstream practice. Science shows that carbon capture has been successful and that carbon capture will not be stored forever. However, it will be made into something more sustainable. For example, the energy can be turned into something to power machinery on a farm, all the lights, and turbines. Carbon capture and methane capture is a project that has been highly researched but not funded well enough carbon produced by that farm is then in a closed circuit with the farm as it is converted into an energy and reused on that farm. This cycle ensures that carbon emissions on that farm are reduced and livestock numbers did not have to change or suffer from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hattie. And do we have any points of information?
Yeah, point of information.
Yeah, go ahead, Dawn.
The opposition mentioned about irrigation being needed for grassland species, but with the use of proper mixes, this can be mitigated. You also mentioned about grain creating a higher economy, but this is as a result of offshoring our emissions and the purchasing of fertilizers. This isn't a sustainable future and it's not reducing climate change.
Although with that, grain itself, when produced in the country and exported throughout the country, can be sustained through its carbon because we are now becoming a self-dependent country. On that, irrigation itself, if you look at the temperatures for the past couple of summers, we are at our highest rates. We don't just rely on the rain and everything now just to depend on to keep our grass growing because we have to water it. Think how much labour, how much more machinery, how much more energy goes into that machinery to ensure that proper irrigation is used on your grass fields. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hattie. So, proposing the motion from SETU, can I welcome Owen Milady? Owen.
Chairperson, judges, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dawn Meats and I come from a proud generation of sustainable and adaptable farmers. And I am truly committed to a grass-based diet and farming in a sustainable manner. Now, we all know what went on during COVID. Few cars on the road and even fewer planes in the sky. It was stated by the International Monetary Fund in the first half of 2020, greenhouse gas emissions reduced by almost 5%. But yes, farming still continued. The Environmental Protection Agency stated that the transportation sector generates the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions. In 2020, during COVID, transportation accounted for 27%, while electricity production accounted for 25%. 60% of our electricity comes from the burning of fossil fuels, mostly coal and natural gas. Let's not forget, this is during COVID, when all of the above activities were greatly reduced. While agriculture was running full steam ahead, yet only accounting for 11%. Now, does anyone here really believe that the cow is to blame? I've never seen a cow settle down to a warm fire. Have you? Let's put things into perspective. One cow on a grass-based diet produces 120 kilos of methane per year, a CO2 equivalent of just 3 tons. One flight from Cardiff to Berlin, lasting just 2 hours, produces 59.8 tons of CO2. Ryanair are operating 1,800 flights per day. I'm sure you can do the maths. Let's take a look at the economic argument, as it is central to today's motion. Irish meat is exported to around 75 countries globally, both within and outside the EU. According to the CSO, Ireland exported over 3.9 billion worth of meat in 2021. Of that, 2.4 billion worth of beef was exported. If this was reduced by just 10%, devastating consequences would follow. This would cripple rural parts of Ireland and the UK. In 2020, Ireland exported €2.7 billion worth of dairy produce, including milk, butter and cheese. Not only can Ireland not survive without this produce, but other countries are relying on this produce to feed their growing population. The opposition are arguing against a grass-based diet. According to the scientific facts, the reality is that ruminants raised on TMRs, total mixed rations, is not the way forward. Cows raised on a TMR will increase dry matter intake, ultimately affecting fertility. This is hardly an argument for a profitable future. There is a reason why a grass-based diet is the future, and it is strongly linked with taste and the consumer demand for animal welfare and sustainability. The taste of beef and dairy products are affected when cows are fed on a total mixed ration diet. Marketing campaigns from McDonald's and Bord Bia show happy animals grazing outdoors on grass and legumes, as it is a grass-based diet. I'm not sure food producers want to put images of feedlots in their marketing campaigns, because it's simply not what the consumer wants to see. Waitrose, a major supermarket chain in the UK, stipulate in their contracts with beef and dairy producers that their livestock are on a grass-fed diet for 180 days per year. Dawn Meats themselves are at the forefront with their exciting new project, where they have established a standalone suckler herd to demonstrate best practice in sustainable beef production. The overriding aim is to generate a high profit from a grass-based suckler to steer, heifer to beef production system. Economists state that Ireland and the UK cannot survive without producing livestock fed on a grass-based diet, both to fill the market demand globally, but also to risk breaking relationships we have built with other countries. Ireland and the UK have the perfect climate conditions and environment to produce cattle and products in an outdoor grass-based system. Livestock produce is feeding the nations around the world. For this reason alone, we will not be the scapegoat for other sectors to blame, as there are thousands of other mitigation measures that can be put in place to combat climate change without removing our staple Sunday roast. Thank you.
Point of information, please. I think we have one from Aberystwyth.
Agriculture is not responsible for emissions. However, 74% of nitrous oxide emissions it is responsible for. CO2 and methane are not the only ones.
Thanks very much for bringing up that point, India. Look, if we want to talk about emissions, as I said in my speech, 60% of all electricity that's produced is from burning fossil fuels. As it stands, it takes 3,200 kilowatt hours to produce 1 tonne of fertiliser. And in that 1 tonne, we only have about 270 kilos of actual nitrogen. It then comes into the ports, is put on spreaders, and is spread out in the land. Evidently, eutrophication and volatilization occurs. While all this circus is going on, 78% of the air we breathe in is nitrogen. What we are arguing for is not to carry on with intensive grassland and TMR feeding. We are arguing for a regenerative agriculture route using mixed species swards within the grass-based diet to fixate nitrogen into the ground and better the environment and animal performance.
Thank you for that. And so to oppose the motion, we have our last speaker from Aberystwyth, Molly Hooper. Molly, over to you.
As stated by India, not all areas in the UK and Ireland are suited to grass growth. For example, in the south of England, grass-based dairy systems are nearly impossible due to climatic challenges, and these are only growing in the coming years. These areas are better suited to growing higher feed value crops, which are better suited to the lower rainfall areas. In its right place, grass-based systems are useful. However, due to differing climatic conditions across the country, simply to say that the profitable future of Irish and UK agriculture is a grass-based diet is misguided. The majority of UK and Irish farms would struggle to maintain current production levels without the addition of grains to the diet. To maintain levels of production needed to feed a growing population, a mixed farming system is essential. You've first stated that regenerative farming is the way forward, and while I do see the advantages of it, I do not see how we can continue to produce the current levels of production. And as stated, you do not wish to reduce levels of stocking rates in the UK and Ireland. I do not believe that it's possible to create these current levels of production using such a system. Whilst SETU are arguing that current production levels should be maintained, this is not feasible unless mixed farming is used. As Aoife stated, there is a huge importance of the livestock production to the economy in rural areas. But to say that this is solely from grass-based livestock production is also misguided. The majority of livestock produced from farms rely on either homegrown alternative forage crops or bought-in feeds. A good mixed farm that uses rotations to produce alternative cash and feed crops on farm is important to ensure resilience in the future, both to challenging climatic and financial conditions. The issue of climate change and global warming is set to have a huge impact on the future of farming in the next 20 or so years, seeing more climatic changes than ever. The last summer's record temperatures highlighted that farming needs to be resilient in order to survive. A reliance on purely grass-based systems is irresponsible. Alternative crops that are better suited to the more changing climate should be considered as better options. For example, with warmer summers, more farms are finding it possible to grow higher feed value crops such as maize in areas which would have previously struggled, and areas of the south of England are struggling to grow grass over summer due to the lack of rainfall. Grass-based systems have their place, but to state that it is the only way for profitable future farming is just incorrect. Owen stated that he thought feeding animals TMR rations was not the way forward. However, having worked on a large dairy farm in the south of England, in that area there is no option for 100% grass-based or a grazed diet due to the climatic conditions. Instead, they grew maize, which was a higher value alternative feed crop, alongside things like barley and legumes, which was all contributed to the TMR. This was a high production, high health herd. So, as another point regarding his TMR argument, actually, animals fed a TMR ration are often better off as the diet is tailored to the animal's specific needs, increasing herd or flock health and fertility. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Point of information.
Yes, we'll take that now, please.
Okay, Molly, you mentioned that we're talking about a 100% grass-based system. That's not what we're looking at. In my introduction, I mentioned a grass-based diet, which surrounds grass. And in the south of England, where you're struggling to grow grass because of low water content and low water and rain, I can assure you the multi-species sward with the deep rooting chicory and plantain will reach the water table and be a more profitable sward for you.
To respond to that point of information, actually this farm that I worked on did have various multi-species swards, all of which burnt off sadly over summer, including some really nice clover mixes which just failed to thrive. So I'm not sure that even introducing a mix in some areas is possible.
Thank you for your response, Molly. So as we're about to hear from our final speaker before the captains give their closing remarks, I want to remind you again that the motion today is the long-term profitable future of livestock production in Ireland and the UK is a grass-based diet. And therefore to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore the significant scientific facts. And to finish with the proposal of the motion, I welcome Cormac Loughran from SETU. Over to you, Cormac.
Chairperson, adjudicators, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cormac Loughran, and today I will be challenging the misconceptions put forward by the opposition. We'll also discuss how slurry and EBI can be used to mitigate climate change, as well as how grass-based systems are a more preferable method of production. According to a 2019 Teagasc report, agricultural emissions have decreased 9% since the 1990s. Meanwhile, according to the CSO, between the years 1990 and 2022, the number of total cows has actually increased 7%. This fact completely contradicts the opposition's position and shows that the increase in numbers is not responsible to the increase in emissions. Nevertheless, Ireland is still moving forward with actions to reduce emissions. Better grassland management improves farm efficiency and thus productivity, thus reducing emissions per unit animal while also facilitating the capture of carbon. Through the use of low-emission slurry spreading, farmers can utilise more nutrients while minimising emissions to the atmosphere. The opposition argues that grass-based diets are propped up by an over-reliance on fertiliser. However, by using low-emission slurry spreading, we can reduce this need for chemical fertilisers, which are actually largely shipped from abroad, both in Ireland and UK. There are also scientific strategies to reduce emissions from slurry itself. Researchers studying the applications of chemical amendments to slurry have found that by acidifying the slurry, we can actually reduce its methane emissions successfully, about a 90% reduction in fact. So when the opposition puts forward the reduction in livestock numbers as the only solution to climate change, it is completely unfounded and unnecessary according to the science. The Economic Breeding Index here in Ireland is a profit index aimed at identifying the most profitable bulls and cows for herd replacement, similar to the UK's Profitability Lifetime Index. By measuring the methane outputs of individual livestock, we can identify animals with lower methane emissions and introduce those genetics into the herds. This already in fact exists in the UK as EnviroCow, and why Ireland included this trait in the Economic Breeding Index in 2022. Scientists estimate that the adoption of improved genetics over the past 20 years has led to the reduction in the carbon footprint of dairy by 14%, while further improvements are viable. The situation with beef also looks promising. A research study into the methane mitigation strategies carried out by UCD found a 30% variation in methane emissions across beef animals with similar performance. Therefore, by selective breeding, we can achieve these lower emissions. Ireland has spent 20 years developing EBI for a grass-based diet. Through the use of EBI and other genetic indexes, we can tailor animals to suit our grass-based systems. Why should we listen to the opposition who would have us throw out over 20 years of research and progress that we've put into developing? Grass-based systems are a better and more profitable solution for farming in both Ireland and the UK. Few countries like ours have the ecosystems which are perfectly suited to grass-based agriculture. The fact is that concentrates cost 4 times more than grazing, hardly more profitable for Irish and UK farmers. Now compare that in terms of cost with farms using total mixed rations, which require more to produce and feed, and the importation of these concentrates for housed livestock comes with massive fossil fuel use itself. By using the farm practices I have described, you can optimize output on grass-based farms, as well as reduce the emissions. Many scientists across a range of sectors have actively found technologies and products that reduce livestock emissions. These scientists, and indeed our team here today, do not accept the argument suggested by the opposition, reduce numbers, because they know that this so-called solution is not grounded in the science. Rather than simply cutting down numbers, which would ruin farms' profitability and decimate this thriving industry, by adopting new technologies and focusing on good practices, we can maintain our numbers, farm on grass-based systems, and still reduce emissions. A win-win solution for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cormac. And we'll now ask if there are any points of information from Aberystwyth, please.
As you've stated, having high producing cows is quite important to reduce low emissions. So obviously, the less cows you have, the less emissions, and the more they produce, you can still keep up with current production levels. The levels of production required from these cows is impossible to achieve on a grass-based system. You will need to supplement that with grains or maize or some other and feed TMR. Do you believe that's correct?
Well, actually, as I say, grass-based, most of this can be done on grass-based systems. It's the majority of what's fed here in Ireland and very much in the UK. And these using the EBI, you can develop the genetics that allow these animals to thrive on those grassland. Similar to what India said with not being able to animals thrive in Scotland. By introducing Scottish breeds and Scottish genetics, you can have animals that do thrive on those areas that don't have as well developed grass.
Thank you very much, Cormac. So we've heard from our two competing universities, SETU and Aberystwyth, debating our motion today, the long-term profitable future of livestock production in Ireland and the UK is a grass-based diet, and therefore to reduce livestock numbers to counter climate change is to ignore the scientific facts. So for concluding remarks and opposing the motion, I welcome back from Aberystwyth Captain Sally Griffiths. Sally.
So to summarise, SETU stuck by their Irish roots to back a predominantly grass-based diet. I mean, stick to what you do best. You're known worldwide for your grass production, with already over 80% of your country being grass-based. But for high production rates to feed a growing population, this won't be sustainable in the future. As you mentioned, livestock numbers, if they were reduced, would cause imports to increase. Well, if grass-only diet production is used everywhere, production is slower, meaning we would still need these imports or more livestock to meet the demand. Mixed farming would provide stability for the UK and Irish production and protect from the global market fluctuations, so in turn protecting the farmer's wallet. So to conclude, from us at Aberystwyth University, we strongly oppose the idea for only grass-based diet and that science holds the key for proving that livestock numbers don't need to be reduced. I'd now like to thank you, the audience, for listening and the judges for their time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. And finally, with his concluding remarks, proposing the motion, is Patrick Shanahan from SETU.
Chairperson, judges, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen. We have listened to many arguments here today by the opposition who have been fairly passionate about the issues facing the UK due to climate change, but they have failed to acknowledge the motion in whole. Let us be quite clear. Much of what the opposition has offered in this debate, in their rush to blame livestock and the highly efficient grass-based diet for climate change, is little more than propaganda and most certainly is ignoring the scientific evidence. Sally, no one suggested only grass diet. We're talking about a grass-based diet. Molly mentioned that there are areas that can't grow grass in Ireland, and this assumption is just simply incorrect. The opposition has argued Aoife's point that livestock numbers contribute to greenhouse gases through methane. We have proven here today that methane produced by livestock has a lifespan in the atmosphere of only 12 years. Livestock have a cyclical impact, whereas fossil fuels do not. Sally suggested that a reduction in livestock numbers and a transfer to a non-grass-based diet is one way that farmers can reduce climate change effects. The science behind this suggestion does not add up. Our team have already told you that a reduction of numbers in one country will be offset by an increase in another country. Because whether you like it or not, the demand for livestock products and animal-derived grass-fed protein is increasing, with our population set to reach 10 billion by the year 2050. So what is to be done? Our team has carefully examined the science, which the motion has directed us to do, and we demonstrated scientifically proven strategies that have and will be adopted by the agricultural sector. These include the use of genetics, low-emission slurry spreading, advances in regenerative agriculture, and the use of multi-species grass-based swards, all points which Cormac and Aoife mentioned. These points will be put in place to ensure a resilient, efficient, and sustainable agricultural system that will ensure the conservation of our planet and a prosperous, profitable, long-term future of our farmers. India has been critical of the economic argument to maintain livestock numbers and has questioned the profitability of a grass-based diet, and in that she has demonstrated some naivety. The reality is that the agriculture and food sector plays a vital role in Ireland and the UK's economy, making up a significant contribution to employment, where there's 164,400 jobs in Ireland and over 4 million jobs in the UK. Our team has demonstrated that agri-food companies such as our sponsors, Dawn Meats and McDonald's, are themselves reliant on the scientific facts and are thus committed to livestock products coming from a grass-based diet. Board BIA and the Red Tractor certified standards are the marketing experts and have been marketing agri-food products coming from livestock fed on a grass-based diet for many years now. And why? Because these products are sustainably produced. They take into account animal welfare and they just taste better. They know that is what the consumer demands. To switch from a grass-based diet based on the opposition's argument today would be an absolute folly, would destroy our brand and sound the death knell for agri-food exports in Ireland and the UK. Hattie argued for an alternative to a grass-based diet, but the solution she offered did not account for the growth in transport and energy sectors. The science is telling us that any increase in food transport from the importation of grains and the likes will increase emissions and thus contribute negatively to climate change. It will also offer none of the beneficial effects of livestock production on a grass-based diet, like soil health, biodiversity, and wildfire prevention. Our team has focused on the scientific evidence, which tells us that the way forward for Ireland and the UK in terms of future profitability and to counter climate change is to maintain current livestock numbers on a grass-based diet. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, join me and our team in strongly upholding the motion here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So thank you very much, everybody. What a great debate. I think we've all enjoyed it. The judges have completed their summation. I just want to remind you that the results of our Great Agri-Food Debate for 2023 will be available on March 10th after all of the debates have been streamed online in the interim. And on March 10th, we will be announcing the top two teams with the highest combined scores, who will go on to London on March 28th to compete for first and second place. We will also announce the third place team with the third highest combination of marks. And we will also be announcing the Best Speaker Award for each of the debates. Anyway, that's for the announcement on March 10th and, of course, the final on March 28th. So until then, thank you for your participation. Goodbye and thank you.